Welcome to Choose the Nickel. I'm your host, George Bailey. My co-founder and technical support is the gorgeous Christina Bailey. This podcast is about giving kids financial freedom. We're interviewing fascinating people for their insights about how children learn to be financially savvy. Our guests come from diverse, sometimes conflicting schools of thought, and we love the opportunity to learn from them. We encourage all to weigh our guests' ideas on how to help children thrive, both financially and in general. We invite you to visit our website at www.choosethenickel.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and try out the things we are learning on the podcast. Our next episode features Amy Wollenberg, a financial advisor with Integrated Financial Group. Amy has over 12 years of experience in retirement services management and advisor project consultation. As her knowledge base has grown, so has her desire to understand the individualized financial needs and goals of others. Amy graduated from Illinois State University with a degree in economics and received her MBA from University of Phoenix. Amy and her husband Scott live in St. Louis, Missouri. While keeping up with their daughter's fun activities fills most free time, family vacations are a must as they love introducing their girls to the world through travel. According to Amy, few things are better than a long road trip complete with good music, great food, unplanned adventures, and visiting family and friends. The opinions voiced in this podcast episode are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Integrated Financial Group, a registered investment advisor. Integrated Financial Group and Amy Wollenberg are separate entities from LPL Financial. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Wollenberg. Amy Wollenberg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. Happy to be here.
So I want you to start out by telling me a little bit about your practice.
Let's see. My financial advisory practice started a few years back, the independent side of things, and has quickly become an amazing part of my life. I've been in the industry in some capacity since 1999. How far would you like me to go back?
1999 sounds actually pretty good. So,
in my mind, I was always working toward this day. Started a couple of years ago when I opened my own practice. For my business, I work with individuals, couples, young, not so young, all people who've decided to really get serious about making intentional financial decisions.
So then what does it mean when you're serious? I mean, how do you qualify to be serious for you?
Well, that's funny that you ask that. What shows real quickly is if an individual or couple will come back for the second meeting. And I don't know what that says about me. No, they all come back, but that's really it. Just the time commitment. You know, everyone is so busy these days and they have so many priorities, and it's really hard to make financial conversation a priority where you commit a couple of hours a month to conversation.
Does it worry you that people don't want to put in this time?
I wouldn't say worry me because they usually do. That's why I say they come back for the second meeting. I wouldn't say worry. No, we have a lot of people who are very serious about those financial decisions and are certainly interested in putting the time in.
Yeah. Well, in our conversations, because you and I know each other, we've worked together before, which is wonderful. And you've sometimes told me about parents who wish for their children to understand money better. And this is really the topic of what we're talking about on Choose the Nickel. Can you tell me more about these conversations that you've had with clients?
Absolutely, George. This idea of incorporating children into the financial conversation really came over the last year and a half. I personally have a tween, and because of that fact, I have a natural market with other parents of tweens.
You have a tween, but you have more than just a tween. You have another kid, right?
I do. She counts too, doesn't she? I have 12-year-old. I almost said 11. I'd be in big trouble for that. I have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, both girls.
So a tween in training.
That's right.
Now I have to get into that just a little bit. Do you think having a 12-year-old is helping your 8-year-old to mature faster?
Well, we'll focus on just the financial maturity, shall we? Yes, definitely. I think more than anything, the 8-year-old sees that there are expensive things out there that the 12-year-old wants.
Yes.
For example, when my oldest was younger, she didn't know about American Girl dolls because she was the oldest. She certainly didn't know that 12-year-olds would want cell phones. And now that she's in middle school and we're having those conversations of kids with cell phones, the 8-year-old's thinking, well, wait, how do I get in on that action already?
Totally. And that's more or less what I was thinking about. There has to be, and I'm wondering with my own kids, what it's like to watch your brother or your sister learn about money and how much they pick up in that process. So, I think like perhaps your 8-year-old will have an edge. Maybe she won't. Do you think she will?
Oh, I think she'll have an edge. I don't know if that's an advantage to me or not. She may have come up with some good ideas on how to get those cell phones earlier rather than later. I didn't have to worry about that with the oldest, but the younger one is certainly thinking she, and the word is coming up already, is entitled to things that many other 8-year-olds may not be interested in.
Yes, definitely. Now, you were talking about your clients, though.
Many of my clients are in similar situations. We keep hearing this word entitlement, and we don't want our children to be entitled, right? That's a real bad word right now, especially in the financial industry. I'm sure you've heard it used once or twice in recent years.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the concern seems to be something like, I want to give my kids the world. I want them to have more than I had. Do they need the cell phones, the devices, the Xboxes, gymnastics lessons, the new leotards, or can they have the hand-me-downs? We want the nice house and the picket fence. Am I going to get them a car when they're 16? How much college should I actually be paying for? All of these things come up, and we want to help our children. We want to give them the world. But wait, we don't want them to actually think that they're entitled to all of those things, right? All of those extras. We want them to understand the difference between needs and wants.
So all of these things come up in your conversations with clients, and the unifying factor really is this: I don't want my kid to be spoiled. I don't want them to be entitled. That would be the unifying thing, but it's going to come up around different contexts. It's going to come around like, do I pay for college? But then for another parent, it's going to come up around like, do I help out with this other expense or, whatever trip for school or a summer project or something like that.
Right. It even, it comes down to when kids start noticing different name brands. At a certain age, they start paying attention to the world around them, and they start thinking, well, I want that $150 jacket, where you and I might think, well, that's absurd. I would never buy a 12-year-old $150 jacket. Other parents don't feel the same way. So we have to look at their environment and address those issues with them, because to say to them, well, that's not important. Well, to them, those things are important. That's their world. That's what they see. It's hard to not discount something that seems so important to them, like the cell phone, like the devices or the car when they turn 16. To them, it means a lot.
Would you say that adults risk having that same problem?
Oh, absolutely.
Like what? Give me some examples on that one.
Are you meaning like the envy of the neighbors,
the
right?
envy of the neighbors. When are we just when do you hear adults talking about the Joneses the most?
The easiest trap that I think I see clients and other adults getting into is that car. The car is so easy to say yes to. It's so easy to walk into those dealerships and know what your budget is and walk out with something way more than what you anticipated getting. And you feel good about that car and you're driving it every day and you want the nice car, whether it was in your budget or not. So I think that's where it comes the most. People can resist a home or going up in price on a home more than they can just, cars are so simple. You walk in the morning and you walk out with it 3 or 4 hours later. But all of a sudden, instead of the $250 a month payment, you're spending $450 a month and you don't even really know how it happened.
Yeah. And I would have to be honest that that's one of my big temptations. I would say cars, I don't quite care as much about, I don't know, anything else. Like I'm not like a big boat guy or a big motorcycle guy or any of those things. And I'm not yet going through like a midlife crisis, I think. But I know that cars is one, because one day I would love to drive a BMW, and that's pricey.
Right.
It's just pricey no matter which way you look at it. How about you? What's your secret? Like, this is the thing I want. And on this level, I can understand what my kid's going through.
Well, for me, it's travel, hands down. I want to go places. I want to see places. And it is hard to restrain and wait for those tickets to go on sale because I want to see the world. So I understand.
And that's what I'm getting at right there. It's how can we bring this to what the kids are experiencing?
Right.
Because if we're experiencing it on one level, then I think it's a little bit easier to teach kids, hey, this is what I go through, and it's very real. And maybe you don't want a BMW like I want a BMW. Thank heavens they don't. I don't need my kid pestering me on that one. BMW, Dad, get the series, the 5 Series. No, but on that level, we can at least understand them. Now, one of the ideas about teaching the next generation about money that I've heard you discuss is getting children to interview their parents and grandparents about money. How did you think of this idea? I love this.
Well, I love this idea, but I can't take credit for it.
Okay.
This was something I read and at first I don't know that I gave it enough credit, but the more I thought about it, the more I loved it. And, for so many people that come into my office, money was such a taboo topic when they were growing up. Do you remember the rule as a child? Never talk about 3 things, right? What were they?
I'm going to say politics, religion, money.
Hands down.
Did I nail them?
Hands down.
Politics, religion, spaghetti. Got it wrong.
Right.
Dang.
So politics, religion, and money. And, the new generation.
Wait, I just got to say I'm sorry to cut you off there, but
please.
That is so bizarre that I could say that. I mean, we didn't really, discuss that beforehand, but we all know that that's true.
Absolutely.
You cannot talk about those things, and we've made it so faux pas. I think we're tearing down some barriers in some of the other things, maybe a little bit, but politics and religion are still pretty delicate.
Well, that's the thing. New generations want those rules off the table. They really do. They want to be able to have conversations about this. It's the world of the internet where these topics are so out there and in your face, which is very different than our generation.
But that's not the same as a conversation, though. And that's, I think you're right. We have more access to that information, but there's something about throwing in the human element to it. Like if I do politics and religion online, it's going to be because some troll has tempted me to get into a debate, probably someone I don't know, or because I'm willing to destroy a friendship with someone I barely know from high school about those things. So I think that still, deep down, we're still very uncomfortable about talking about money with the people that we really know.
And that's why I love this idea of starting with the money interview. First, it opens up the money conversation in a very safe way with previous generations. So kids can maybe, oftentimes kids are working on school projects and parents and grandparents love to help with school projects. So what we do is with families, I'll give them pre-drafted questions for their children. Questions like, how much did you make per hour in your first job? How did you pay for dates when you were a teenager? What was your first big purchase you made when you got that real paycheck as an adult? And giving them those pre-drafted questions really makes it feel a lot more comfortable. And then the conversation starts and the laughter begins. And I think, I've heard this with the tween parents that, my kid's going to want to go out with their friends. And where are they going to get money to do that? And
you're saying they're going to want to go out with their friends, period.
On dates to the movies or to the trampoline place down the street. And they right now, as early teenagers or preteens, are asking their parents for money. So by having these interviews of how did you pay for dates when you're a teenager, they start to hear, oh, well, you had to pay for that yourself? Oh, you had a job and you babysat when you were 12? Wouldn't
it be just a monster backfire if the grandparents my parents paid for it?
Yeah, you got to watch out. You probably need to pre-interview before you assign
condition the grandparents to talk, with wisdom. Okay, this is time to demonstrate your grandmotherly wisdom. Don't tell them, oh, I was spoiled, worked out fine.
Life is good. Right. Well, besides just asking these specific questions, what I hope to encourage, although it's not really it necessarily specifically help the financial conversations, but I just love the idea of bonding between generations. And that's what you and I have talked about, having these interviews, having the conversations. Too often I look around the house at family gatherings and the young kids are on their phones and the grandparents are watching the baseball game, or they just fell asleep watching the baseball game because there's really no interaction going on.
Yeah.
So the interview.
What a loss too.
Absolutely.
Honestly. And in that older generation is looking to, I don't know how to put this more delicately, but looking to feel useful, probably not having felt that way for a while because of the way that we sometimes treat,
right.
And there's a real opportunity there that is totally lost.
Absolutely. So the older generations want to share their wisdom, right? They want the kids to ask them. That's the thing. They don't want to just start preaching. They want the kids to ask them questions and to be interested in their lives. So we give them that platform.
There's nothing quite as desperate sounding as somebody just being like, let me tell you something, like no interest there. People, I think that you can train kids to be that sensitive, to go out and find that wisdom and then to enjoy it.
Absolutely. They enjoy the stories that are told, the memories that are shared, not over technology, not text messaging or through an email, which is also old school now, but through actual conversation. And that's where the smiles happen. And that's where the memories will really stick are those conversations. Kids love the connection to adults, whether they know it or not. They do enjoy it once they get into it, and then the adults love that the kids are interested in them. So
yes.
We give them the questions so that there really doesn't have to be any thought going into it. Here are the questions, child. Go interview your grandparents and come back to the meeting next time with the answers. And then guess what? Those memories and stories and laughter gets passed on to me. And as we're sitting around a table during a family planning meeting, financial family planning meeting, all this stuff gets told to me and how much fun do we have? And then it starts to help me see, which is important to the financial planning process, what are the values of this family? Because that's the core of planning in my mind of I can't make recommendations without understanding values. And in how much fun do we have going through those conversations?
How important is accountability in this activity? You mentioned it. You said that they actually do come back.
Right. Interviewing the other generations is harder than it sounds, because of schedules, because of, it just wasn't the right time. So
what does that mean? Oh, that's such a cop-out.
So I have to stay on top of those a little bit, and the best thing that I can do is set an end date of, in 6 weeks, come back to my office and here's we'll reconvene. If I don't put that date on the calendar and just say, let me know when the interviews are complete, we'll never actually have the discussion. We have to have a due date as if this was actually a class assignment.
Nice. Because we all love homework.
Yes.
Now, have you had any success with this? I mean, any specific examples of children or parents who have come back and said, oh my gosh, I learned something really wonderful?
In my industry, people perceive it as difficult working with close friends and family because they perceive the financial conversation as being a private one, right? So
yeah.
I think the biggest success I've had is some of my dearest friends. I've received feedback from them that they really feel like this sort of project should be done as a wedding gift, because it has helped their marriage so much 10, 12 years in, that they wish they had been having this conversation since the beginning. And what a compliment that is.
That is really powerful. Now, one of the ideas that comes to my mind that is very similar in some ways, you talked about like family reunions, and you have your little cliques, particularly in larger families. That the kids hang out with the kids and the adults hang out with the adults and everybody kind of groups off and whatnot, missed opportunities. I interviewed James Hughes Jr. He's the author of Family Wealth, Keeping in the Family.
I loved that interview, by the way.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And Jay is incredible. And if you read in his book, and I was actually rereading a portion of his book recently where it talks about how grandparents can really help
the grandchildren by getting them involved in nonprofit activity. And so you have this same experience. It might not be like, hey, granddad, tell me about, the first dollar you made or something like that. But in effect, if grandmother and grandfather are stepping in and they're helping the children figure out how to put together a charitable cause, whether it's something simple like, raising money through a lemonade stand to give to someone, or whether it's like actually setting up a nonprofit together, which probably in a more affluent family is able to do something like that. I think that wisdom and experience is still going to come through. Can you think of any other way that we can draw on the wisdom and experience of our elders?
There's so many ways. It's hard to come up with just one at this point, but I think it all starts with those conversations. Teaching the kids responsibility, helping kids understand that they need to manage their own money. In that family values book, they talk a lot about different generations and how one generation giving things to the second generation then creates problems for the third generation, and actually teaching them financial responsibility is so important. So I love the idea of maybe if grandparents feel like, oh, they really maybe didn't do it the way they would have with their own children, communicating how they might do it differently with their grandchildren to try to change that course and ensure that shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves does not happen as quickly as it might.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I understand what you're saying about making sure that all of this is done in a way that actually unites all three generations.
Right.
And not just like, now, great, we've got grandfather and grandson and grandmother and granddaughter all scheming together. And then the parents are like, wait a minute, I don't agree with the money philosophies that are being perpetuated here. So there has to be some unity. That's very challenging, but I love the idea. I actually need to do that with my own kids. Okay. So you hold me accountable. Like next time we see each other, give me 6 weeks, whatever. I will do something like that.
Well, what I want you to do with your kids is something that I just started with my own, and that's the allowance factor. And this is a tough one. And again, this is something that I read. I read a lot of books on the subject by very smart people. And one idea that I love now and that I've actually implemented is an idea that I thought was just completely off the wall when I first heard it. And that's this idea of allowance, a number based on the age. So giving a child who's 12, like mine, $12 a week. Now that's a lot of money. And the biggest in my mind, right?
Oh my gosh, it isn't mine.
Yes, it's a lot of money. But what we need is kids to understand the value of money. And that's the biggest challenge that I see that we're trying to work through as parents of young kids. How do we teach them to appreciate what money is worth? That when we go to the amusement park, which I was telling you I did this weekend, and we spent a lot of money, well, that money wasn't in an amusement park fund. It takes away from the fact that we need to buy groceries this week. It's not just this magical amusement park money. It's all from the same bank account. So we need them to understand that money that we use to do a fun thing actually impacts the money that we needed for the new pair of tennis shoes for gym class. It has an impact.
To me, this sounds like a simpler way of exploring the concept of the opportunity cost.
Oh, my favorite. One of my favorite phrases, George. Opportunity cost. Exactly.
I know that you have a BA in economics, and so I'm just going to play on that.
You did that on purpose. Yes.
Yeah, I did that on purpose.
So allowance systems traditionally fail. And why do they fail? Because parents set up a chore chart. The kid is supposed to complete the chart, but they don't, right? The kid doesn't get the allowance, but the parents end up buying them things anyway because my fault. I didn't follow through with what I was, it ends up becoming a fight because if you want the dollar, you need to do the dishes.
Yeah.
And that does not make for a fun environment. It really doesn't.
What's crazy about that though is that we'll do that and we'll say, well, don't you want the dollar? Don't you want the dollar? And all of a sudden, the thing that they should want becomes not fun to want anymore.
Absolutely. You're exactly right.
Just let them not get it or this other system. We'll see.
Right. So we fall victim as parents to they have to have something, right? I had my 8-year-old bartering with me over the weekend saying, you can take my allowance for the next 3 weeks if you give me this now. Well, that wasn't part of the deal.
Yep.
She's got to wait the 3 weeks. And after the 3 weeks passes and she has earned her 3 weeks of allowance, then she can buy the thing that she so desperately needed to have this weekend. Mind you, it was a stuffed animal. Okay. But this is the way the 8-year-old feels. Please give me my allowance for the next 3 weeks because I need this desperately. And she bats those pretty eyes and it's hard to resist. But this allowance idea that I want to continue telling you about because I love it so much is the kids get paid their $12, mine, $12 and $8 regardless. Every Friday, I give them their money, whether they did the chores or not. Now, that's crazy, right? That's what I thought. It sounds crazy.
I'll admit I'm having a hard time.
I know. I had a terribly hard time with it. But what I did when we first started this plan was I sat down and said to them, how can you help the household run better? This is going to be a fun summer. Mom and dad are working. The household needs to run. What tasks can you do to make it run better? And they came up with their list and they posted it on the refrigerator. So the things that they're up for to do are laundry, dishes, cleaning the bathroom counters. I don't let them touch the toilets yet. I know people do, but I just don't love it. So things that we both
you got to make sure
on.
They wash their hands afterwards. Yeah.
So tasks that we agreed on. Okay. There are tasks.
That's exactly how I feel, by the way. At least on this, we can agree. Okay. Just don't let your kids clean the toilet. Right. Tough it out. Do it yourself.
So we have the list of things that they would like to do to contribute to the household and also things that I ask them to do. I added my own. Things like make your bed every day. That's just mine. I just need the beds made. I can't explain it. Yeah. I just need the beds made.
No, I'm the same.
So here's the deal. So they get the allowance regardless. We were on vacation last week. They did not do their chores or their list or whatever you want to call it, but I gave them the allowance anyway. And here's the reason. Because I want my 12-year-old to take that $48 every month and use it for the things that I would be buying anyway. Okay.
Oh.
That's the key. So this is the key to the allowance. She now has $48 to go to purchasing the extras. So when school is in session, if she wants to buy goldfish at lunch, then she needs to fill her lunch account because guess what? I had goldfish at home, but she was lazy and didn't want to pack it. So now she wants them at lunch and I don't know, are the goldfish better? I doubt it, but she needs to fill her lunch account because I have perfectly good food at home. Okay. So that's coming out of her $48. Let's say she takes $10 for the month towards food at school. Then she's going to give me $10 a month to pay me back for her cell phone. Okay, now she's down to $28. If she wants to go to the movies with a friend, and I'm saying, how much money do you have left? All of a sudden, she finds herself saying, well, friend, let's go to the $5 theater on Tuesday. And, let's share a snack. Let's share a popcorn. And we'll ask for a free cup of water because that way I only have to spend $10. And now she's down to $18 for the month, right? Yeah. Following me here?
Yep.
So you went from $48 for the month. Instead of me giving her movie money, she's figuring out, my money will last longer if I go to the cheap movie. And she wants a new swimsuit. I bought her 1 or 2 because I'm okay with that. She's growing.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden we're going to the pool for 2 weeks and she sees a trendy swimsuit that she just has to have. Well, she's going to have to wait till next month because she's down to 18 and she just doesn't have enough money.
Yeah.
So she starts to see, all right, I'm going to look for the deals. I'm going to spend less money on the movie ticket. I need to wait. I can't just have the new swimsuit. I'm going to wait till my next allowance comes through and then I'll get the new swimsuit. And you know what? I bet between now and the time she gets her allowance, she might just look for a coupon online. And she wouldn't have done any of that if I just gave her the money.
That is very cool. I am open to that idea as stated. I think that there's some really good wisdom there.
So the key is we're trying to make them understand the value of money.
Yeah.
Just buying them stuff does not do that. Giving them the money that we're going to spend anyway might do that. If we continue to be accountable, if we say, if you want fast food tonight, I've got food at home. If you really have to have that fast food, well, sure, but it's going to be your money. And if they say, okay, I'll spend my $5 and I'll get that because I'm just in the mood for it, that's fine.
That is very challenging. And I can see, and yet it makes sense. I can see where it takes a lot of discipline from the parents. What I like, and I really love it. Like to me, it's almost like a total scam. Because what you're doing, because you're essentially saying, yeah, okay, I admit I would have spent this money anyhow, but now you're putting it in there so that they get the feeling of spending the money that you were going to spend anyhow. But no, it's not a scam in the sense that the lesson comes with it.
Absolutely.
And that's very powerful. I think the other thing that I'm thinking right now is like, what about those families with lots of children like mine? Oh my gosh. But then again, I'm going to have to spend the money anyhow.
Well, you need to come up with a number that works for you.
Yeah,
that's a standard number of dollars per age. That may not work for your household. It may not make sense for your household.
Yeah.
But,
well, I got to do quick math. Wait, I'm thinking, okay, so I've got a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2 who's turning 3-year-old. So what is that? 10, 8, 6, that's 27 altogether. It's $27 a week. Is my math good?
Here's the question. Do they need or want electricity, or should you make them pay the electric bill?
No, I agree with that, but I'm just like, I'm doing the math, $27 a month. That's, time however many weeks. And sometimes it's going to be over 125.
Age appropriate. You need to come
true.
up. Your youngest is not going to be motivated by this in any way.
No.
So that's where you have to get creative, and that's where you have to figure out where is it really effective and what ages is it effective. In my situation, and once kids are old enough to get their own jobs, of course, it's not effective anymore whenever they are able to actually earn income on their own.
Yeah.
So you've got this window that could potentially be really good for this lesson.
But, that, for me, that raises the question then, what about that transition? And I'm not expecting like an answer or, like a set opinion on this, but what happens when you make that transition from, hey, I'm going to give this allowance to now you're making money? Because that's going to be tough. You want to incentivize that they want to work, that they want to make their own money and whatnot.
Well, the hope at that point is that they've learned to manage the small money, the $12 a week compared to what they're going to be making at a real job, right? So they've learned to manage it in a way that now when they get their real job, they're paying for gas on their own. Because so many parents don't make their kids pay for gas, right?
Yeah.
They're paying for car insurance, which also is not always a requirement in households. But the kids grow up expecting that for the extras, they have to pay. They have to understand how to manage their money. So not every family would agree with that, because not every family thinks these things that I'm mentioning are extras. And that's another thing you have to define is what are the extras? And that's a conflict within my own household between my husband and I. He does not think ice cream is an extra. Basket, or I shouldn't say, ice cream with the family is required.
Your problem is what? like, what's the alternative to not being an extra? An ice cream? I have no idea what you're talking about.
So that's what you have to figure out as parents, as a household, is what are the extras? What are considered things that you're going to give them because you want to. Cell phones, it's a debate at this point. Is it an extra or is it a need,
Yeah.
So that's each household has to decide what is a reasonable amount of allowance. The thing about doing no official chore chart, just giving the money no matter what, came from me hearing a family say, well, they have to do chores. Our family has to run, and I'm not going to pay my kids to do what we expect them to do.
And so, I'm totally stuck in the middle of this debate right now. Yeah.
And so that's where I thought, well, you know what? Whether they do it or don't, I'm going to pay the allowance. And guess what? So far they are. They are doing it. I don't know how long it will last. I'm hoping forever. But right now they're doing it. They know they're getting paid and on Friday, and they know that I expect certain things to get done. So far, so good. I'll stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Wise words.
Yes.
Now, before we conclude here, I do want to get into your own childhood.
Sure.
I want to ask if you have any specific memories of being taught about money.
Well, the most memorable experience when it comes to money in my family are memories that anyone who has vacationed with my parents also know. And that is that my dad is nationally known for the concept of vacation money. So we've got people who've been vacationing with our family, since they were 2, 4, 6, whatever age. And we've got my brother-in-law who just joined the family a few years ago. Anyone who's ever spent time on vacation with my dad knows we spend vacation money. And it's kind of the joke. If he wants to take the extended family out for dinner on vacation and everyone offers to pitch in for the bill, he refuses. Absolutely not. He says, I've got this one. It's just vacation money. It's vacation money. Put your credit cards away. It's vacation money. If he wants to rent a boat or play the extra round of golf, he does it. Why? Because it's vacation money. It's the ongoing joke. My father-in-law always quotes it and says, oh, we're on vacation. It's vacation money. And we all know he's talking about my dad. But what we didn't know as kids, and what I'm not sure other people know, is how hard my mom worked planning for those vacations for months prior to our trips so that my dad had the vacation money to so freely spend. She was siphoning money away knowing that over the summer, my dad was going to spend his vacation money very freely without rules. And so she planned for it. It's such a life lesson because as a kid, we just thought, vacation money must grow on trees because, this is great.
Nobody's set a cap on wait a minute, we've dipped quite a bit into our vacation money. No, vacation money was an endless stream of joy and bliss and cotton candy. Okay, yeah, I got it.
You got it. And
I kind of like vacation money. I wish it were a constant in my life.
Absolutely.
Don't worry, hon, it's vacation money.
And
we're not on vacation.
Brought such joy to our family. That was so fun. And as I got older, I would overhear the conversations quietly in the kitchen between my mom and dad saying, well, if you want vacation money, then we're not doing this month. Because she was slowly taking money out of the monthly budget to fill the upcoming vacation money fund.
Smart mom. Serious.
Brilliant mom.
Serious.
My mom often talks about living paycheck to paycheck, and there was a time in our lives where my dad only got paid once a month, and how challenging that was. I have 4 children in my family, and it was hard to make one paycheck a month last throughout the month. But she did it, and she did it brilliantly, and this was one of the ways. She would manage the money throughout the month to ensure that the extras were available when the money was needed. But it took a long time for me to realize that was going on behind the scenes.
I still love the concept. I'm going to live my life that way. No.
Well, and I think that too.
There are people that live their lives that way.
Without the planning, right. They're paying after the fact.
It's an endless vacation.
Absolutely. Well, another thing when I think about money advice for parents and children is just the responsibility that I was given as a kid. We were told you had to have jobs very early, and we enjoyed that, and I think if you teach children to manage money at whatever ages they can handle, I think that's what my parents did, and I can't think of more specific examples, but they somehow instilled in me to do the same. And the things that I've done when my daughter was 6 and learning about math in school, she thought this was fun. I don't know if all kids would think this was fun, but she thought it was fun. If I gave her an actual calculator, I would actually take a calculator, not a cell phone, but a calculator to the grocery store and say,
what is that thing?
I know. This week, we are spending $80. Keep me on track. And then the neat thing would be is she would say, well, Mom, if you get that bag of chips, which would be a name brand bag, it's going to be $4.89. But hey, if you get this brand of chips, same chips, Mom, it's only $2.50. And then she would do the subtraction. So we'd start with 80 on the calculator. She'd subtract it. And then if we put something back, she'd add it in. And when I was getting down to $20, she'd say, we're getting close to the end here. And it was such a great lesson. And so that starts early. That's when they start understanding the concept of math.
Yes.
And they don't have to actually add or subtract because they have the calculator. They just have to be taught how to use it. And they love helping you keep on track. And they'll come up with the ideas of, let's get the cheaper thing because I still want the ice cream. And I know it's at the end of it's the last thing we buy is ice cream. They know they want it. So there better be $3 left to get that, half gallon.
and ice cream is not a extra.
We're clear on that.
We're clear on that. It's just,
right.
Whatever the toppings are an extra.
Right.
Okay. Like maraschino cherries. Come on.
Exactly.
That's a little going overboard, but not having ice cream, that's also overboard in its own special way.
Right. And then a couple other things as they get older, because that's a young one. But I think about teenagers. Teenagers now don't actually see money, right?
No.
You don't see paychecks even anymore. The paychecks are automatically deposited. So kids don't even really understand when I talk about one paycheck a month, because when I was young, my dad would actually have that paycheck in his hand. And it was like, oh, dad got paid today. Well, nobody even really knows that's happening anymore because of direct deposit. Cash is rarely exchanged for goods, right? Kids don't see the movement. They see the credit card. That's it.
Yeah. On top of that, I think very interesting is they don't see the consequences of going overboard with credit. Those things don't play themselves out right in front of them. They know the stress. And I think that it's interesting, piggybacking off of what you're saying, kids also don't see the consequences of it. Their parents may very well be in debt and they don't know it, or they don't understand it, or they don't understand the consequences. And it's very hard to articulate that. You know, my wife and I have a loan from law school, and it's really hard to weigh in on my children on what that means because everything, you know, the loan is abstract, credit cards are abstract, all of these things, and so they don't see the consequences.
And that's why I love for teenagers the idea of having the teenagers sit with you and pay bills on the computer for one full month. Every time you pay a bill, or when you sit down twice a month, whatever it is to pay bills, you have them sit with you and see it. And I know that's a difficult thing.
Yeah,
parents don't always want them to see the kids to see, oh, well, dad got paid $1,000 this week. But there are ways you can do it where you're not putting your salary right in front of your children. Even though I don't mind. I like being open with how much money is coming in the door. I understand why that's still taboo in some ways. Maybe transferring a certain amount of money into your account for the month and letting them start. Here's $2,000 in the account. Let's see how long this lasts.
Yeah.
So they're not actually saying, well, dad got paid X amount of money, if that's still a concern and a taboo subject. So you put $2,000 in the account and you say, let's sit down and pay the bills. And they see, oh my gosh, $2,000 is gone in 2 weeks. Well, that's a huge life lesson for them.
It's such a great point. And I think that we need to be a little bit more open on that. First of all, I agree with you that we need to be willing to share quite a bit of information, maybe not all. I don't know. I'm still giving this a lot of thought about what our finances are. But then you mentioned like, well, we need to do this for a month. I would dare say we need to do it for like 2 months, 3 months, a year, you know, for them to really learn that lesson, at least get it to the point that they get like, this is a constant thing. It's like the laundry. It does not go away.
Well, you know, especially as the kids get closer to graduating high school, several months at a time would be very enlightening. And then also, of course, they get in college, but at that point, many of them are living away. So the end of high school is a great time to do 2 or 3 months of bill paying so that they see the reality of being a grown-up and what bills actually look like.
I have one more question for you, and that is, what is your absolute favorite charitable cause?
Absolute favorite? I think I have to give you 2 because I don't think I can do an absolute favorite.
That's a little bit too much charity here.
No.
Go for it. Go for it. No, I'll let you.
So the first is anything Alzheimer's related. I know so many people who have been impacted by it. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, my husband's grandmother, each died from that dreadful disease, and it was so difficult to watch. You know, it's especially cruel as it made it impossible for my daughters to get to know these amazing women. You know, they did get to meet them, but not in a stage of life where they really got to know them. And it saddens me. You know, every time it crosses my mind, it just is heartbreaking to know that they didn't get to know those wonderful women. And the women didn't get to know my daughters, because each of those women, nothing they wanted more in this world was great-grandchildren. And by the time the great-grandchildren started coming, they were too sick to really appreciate it, you know. And all of them were too young. It's always too young, but all of them were very young. The second charity that I hold very close to my heart is the Ebenezer Child Care Trust. So Ebenezer is a school and home to children in Livingstone, Zambia, who are orphaned due to AIDS or infected by the disease themselves. I was fortunate to meet the founder of the school and many of the children in 2009 when I visited Zambia. Ranji was her name. She unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but the school lives on, and her name and her mission lived on because she had so many children who grew up in the home and have continued on with her legacy. So having met them, having seen the joy in those children's lives, will keep me forever connected to them. I don't think I could pick a favorite out of those 2 causes.
I can see how hard that would be. Those are both beautiful causes. Amy Wollenberg, it was such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, George. It is always a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Everybody else, thank you for listening. We hoped you enjoyed the interview and found useful ideas about things you can do with your kids. Be sure to check the show notes at www.choosethenickel.com for links to names, books, and other resources we discussed in today's show. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter and visit our contact page where you can give us feedback. We invite you to share Choose the Nickel with your friends and join us in our quest to give kids financial freedom. And just a reminder, the opinions voiced in this podcast episode are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Integrated Financial Group, a registered investment advisor. Integrated Financial Group and Amy Wollenberg are separate entities from LPL Financial.